just going to talk and see where it goes. I really want you to start telling me about England and about coming over and all that. Tell me about that kind of experience and your memories about that.
We're going back quite a few years, so it may not be 100% accurate.
Okay.
But I assure you, what I do remember, I'll put it all in my favor. No. Well, let's start in 1939. That's when war started in Europe. The United States, they hadn't joined in and didn't for a couple of years, maybe a little longer. But all Britain and much of Europe was involved. And I was still in school at that time. And England, not knowing that the prospects were that they would Germans would bomb England. And so it was decided in the government to evacuate all the school children. So we packed up a little suitcase. I have no brothers or sisters, so it was just me. And off Mom and I went to the railway station, and they put us on a train, and me, along with hundreds of children, we went out into the country, Canterbury in Kent, which was about 40, 50 miles away. Now, at the time, I was born in the borough of Woolwich, which is a suburb of London. And it was, we were getting a little antsy because we knew that there'd be some air attacks anyway. And that was the reason that, because we were living in a dangerous area. And my home happened to be near the River Thames there in London, and it was exciting. In a sense, I was young.
Right.
I was 14 when the war started, and to me, it was all going to be a great big adventure, I didn't know any different. I learned soon enough that it's not an adventure. It's a very dangerous situation. But anyway, I went to Canterbury and stayed there for almost a year. And at the time, there wasn't any heavy bombing right then. So when I learned that, and I just wanted to be home, and persuaded my mom and dad to let me come home. And, now, I don't know. I said, oh, come on, Mom. I said, the school isn't adequate here, and no, let me come home. Okay. So, and she missed me as much as I missed her. Mm-hmm. And so I came home. Well, it wasn't too long after I got home that, the night raids started. And being as close as we were to the River Thames and to London itself, there was a lot of bombing, which was pretty scary. And we go out into the yard where Dad had put up, we were all given air raid shelters. Dad got one constructed, and at night we'd sleep in the shelter. Damp, cold, spiders, it wasn't very pleasant. But that's all right, we made it. And then when I went to school, go back to school in the mornings, I spent most of the day in the air raid shelters in school. So it was getting close to where I would, because of my age, I would, then I guess it was what, I was 15, 16 by then. And so I said, I'd rather just quit, get a job. And everyone, women especially, you had to work at something. You couldn't just sit at home. My mother, they drafted her into working in a cafeteria that was attached to the building where I finally got a job in there. And because, you know, from 16 to 44, women were drafted either into armament factories or Women's Land Army, and I thought, I don't want that. I don't want to, you know, on a farm. No way. I'm a city girl. I didn't want a farm. And so, you know, we just struggled along through the... And by that time, when I was, I guess, close to between 16 and 17, 17 certainly, the United States had come into the war. And England was swamped with Yankee soldiers. They were all, if they came from the United States, they were Yankees, you know. We didn't differentiate as we do now.
Right.
But, I was, I was employed in this building and as a telephonist. That is a telephone operator. And of course, when they needed to go to various parts of the factory where I was, you know, the calls would come through and I would switch them through wherever they wanted to go. And one day, I had a call from an officer calling for a William McSpedden. And I said, no, sir, there's not a William McSpedden here. He said, oh, yes, there should be. And I got him interested then, why he wasn't there. And I said, I will make inquiries, sir. He said, well, please have him return the call, told me where to call. And so I just put out a general call for William or Bill McSpedden to report to the office. And it wasn't too long before this big fellow came walking through the door, said, I'm Bill McSpedden, who paged me, you know. I said, you're to return a call to an officer in the city, in London, which he did. And I learned later from my co-workers in the office that they said, you know, ooh, you know. And I said, well, he's all right. I didn't go overboard, you know, though I was a little interested.
Yes.
But, you know, and I learned that he was interested too and made discreet inquiries. No, she's not married. No, she's not engaged. No, no one special for her. He said, great. And then he told the young man, that one of his fellow soldiers, he said, I've just met the girl I'm going to marry.
Oh.
How do you know that? He said, I just know. And, of course, the rest is history there. We did marry. But he was extremely nice. Both my parents enjoyed him and liked to talk with him. And Bill was he had a way with him that made people feel comfortable, you know, and had many, many friends, and that continued all through the years we lived here in Greenville. He always had lots of people, and most everyone in this small area knew Bill McSpedden. So, But anyway, the war progressed, the danger progressed. It became, where you literally took your life in your hands because you didn't know when. Then daytime bombing started. That was all nighttime. Then daytime bombing started, and it was very, very dangerous then. And he continued to, when he would come into the city, he would come to my house. And Mother said, well, I hate to just send him back out in the night. She said, we have the spare bedroom. Why doesn't he just spend the night here, and then he can leave for wherever he was stationed there? And that's the routine. We, learned to like each other, and then fell in love. And one amusing thing, because he said, he proposed to me. And I said, oh, well, thank you, but I can't give you an answer. Why not? I said, have you talked to my father, my parents? No. I said, oh, you must do that. I can't begin to give you an answer until I get permission. That time I was about between 17 and 18. So it was a kind of cat and mouse game after that. Mother would step in through the door and she'd say, whisper, has he talked to Dad yet? And I'd say, no. Well, then the day will progress, or when he'd come down the next time, has he talked to Dad yet? I said, I don't think so. So finally he screwed up courage, and I think Dad had already suspected that I was serious about things. And Dad had said, now, I'm very fond of Bill. I think he's fine. But he said, you're far too young to get married. Oh, I said, but Dad, they'll send him back to the United States, and then I know we can't get married then. And, well, Father, I guess, just settled in his mind that, well, there's not much I can do about it, and I might as well just give her permission, So it was all settled, and then we had a very, very nice marriage. And we married in 46. No. Oh, goodness. No, that's when I came to the United States in 46. 44. 44 was when we married. And that was great, It was a little difficult finding suitable clothes because we couldn't just go out and buy clothes like we can now. Mm-hmm. Everything was rationed. And we were allowed one new pair of shoes a year, and you just couldn't go out and buy, And as for go shopping for bridal clothes, oh, that was out of the question. But I finally found a girl that was in my office where I worked, and it was a sad reason that I got the dress that I got. She had bought her clothes, and her husband was in the British Army, but he was killed, I think in Tobruk. And she said, I have no use now, I don't want it. And she said, you're certainly welcome to my dress, and that I won't need it. And so that's how I got my wedding dress. And I think a favorite cousin looked around and found a suitable veil. The girl didn't have a veil. But we got all the, all the stuff that was needed for a wedding, and that was a lot of fun. Just really nice. And Mom and Dad, of course, they got quite emotional because they knew that it wouldn't be long before I'd be shipped over to the United States. And then I learned a little later that I was pregnant with Donna, my eldest. So Miss Donna came along, and it was kind of strange. Went to not to a hospital for the general public, but this was a maternity home. That's how it was in England. You went to special hospitals for babies, not to the general hospital. And so there'd be other daddies and coming in to see their newborns, and I didn't have anyone. So anyway, got through that, and we weathered the rest of the war, and it never stopped. The bombing, and it was, that was pretty horrendous. A lot of damage done then. A lot of damage. But anyway, I met some very nice, very, very nice gentlemen, friends of Bill. And everyone knew Bill. Everyone liked him. Americans have always been extremely friendly. Now, not so with all Europeans. And the British tend to be, or did then, rather reserved. You just don't meet someone and the next day, hey, how you doing? No. And, but that's how it was with Bill. Everyone knew him. He made friends so easily. And then Donna was around 6 months old then. And I received word that, it was time for me to get ready to leave for the United States. Well, it was a happy, bittersweet, because having to leave Mom and Dad, and of course they tried to be as stoic as they could, but, just wish me the best, and we got on the train, and went down to Southampton. Went to Southampton. And I had to stay they put all the war brides, we kind of stayed in army barracks for about a week, and that was pretty miserable, because they didn't have baby beds and that, they converted army cots, and you were afraid the babies were going to roll off on the floor or something like that. It wasn't a good situation. And to be honest with you, many of those American soldiers, they didn't particularly want to fool with, Why get all those get all those British women over and then, get them married and then send them back. And there'd be our girls, who be looking for husbands. And here, that didn't sit too well with some of them. But anyway, they put up with it, and we stayed there for 2 weeks. And it was time to leave for Southampton. We sailed on the Queen Mary, which at that time was the largest liner, being used. And I think there were over 3,000 of us. Some Canadians who had been over there from the very beginning, from 1939. So some of those families, they had, children 5 or 6 years old. And so Anyway, we managed to get through and make it. It was rough. Imagine all those babies, squalling, screaming, crying babies. And one of the rules was, or the rules were, while you were on board, you did not leave your baby unattended at any time. So I was, I think, 5 days on board. And I tell you, I was so glad to let someone else take a baby, you know, really glad. And Bill's mom couldn't wait to grab her, you know, and take care of her. But we saw, after being strictly rationed for food for all those years, not only clothing, but food and the everyday things that we get used to, you know, such as to have warm houses, because you couldn't, if you needed coal, and most of their homes back then were heated by coal, you had to go get it yourself, because they just didn't. Most men had already been shipped out, you know, in the army, so they didn't have a lot of help to deliver. Couldn't do any delivery. So if there were all those inconveniences, and for instance, you were on the honor system that when you ran a bath, no more than 5 inches, and you couldn't run, not every day. You couldn't take a bath every day. Just several times a week, but not every day. But you had 5 inches. Now that's not very much.
Mm-hmm.
And we came to the conclusion, Mom and Dad did, Edna, you can have the first bath. Fresh water. Mother went second. My poor dad, all those years, never had a fresh tub of water. He was always number 3. But, you know, we made it. And food was rationed very strictly. You were lucky if you got 1 egg every 5 weeks. So there wasn't any hope of you getting pies and cakes and all that business.
Mm-mm.
Not very little sugar. Just, it was a lot of things you had to do without. But one can survive. One can do things, you know, with use little ingenuity and stir up some stuff to make what is palatable. But that was really nice. And then it was time, went on board, as I say, 5 days, 4 or 5 days. It was 4 days on the boat. Then we had to spend another day on the boat, on the ship, till, you know, and they discouraged husbands and relatives from coming and picking up. They said, no, we'll send Red Cross with you and we'll get you to your destination. And that will be easier for everyone. Well, I certainly expected to be escorted from New York to Nashville, because that's where I was going. That was my husband's home. And, well, they put us on the train there in New York. Bye-bye. And that was the last I ever saw of anyone that was supposedly accompanying me to Nashville. So here I was. I won't say I couldn't speak the language, because that would be untrue. We were all speaking English. But American English and English are 2 different things. Mm-hmm. For instance, when we had to changed trains in Indianapolis. They were telling me to look for a red cab. I thought, what's a red cab? So I couldn't see anything red cab. Well, that's, I understand, is what they called a porter, because that's what he wore, you know. And he was one who took care of carrying your bags and etc. So finally got that straightened out, got on the train, and then it was, what, I guess 24 hours till we got to Nashville. That was pretty wild. And they gave you, in order to indicate to people who you were, we wore tags, large tags. I wore one, and so Donna, just being a baby, I had to wear tags for her. So I had all these tags hanging on me, which caused people to look, you know, what's wrong with her? She needs tags on. But I did have, and I didn't find, to be honest with you, I didn't find a great deal of help, as much as I thought I would have got. When we got on the train, New York, all the way down to, and we changed in Indianapolis. Then we got to Louisville. Now that was on a Sunday that day, Mother's Day. And everyone, those that were getting on the train there in Louisville, they were all dressed up. Corsage, you know, for Mother's Day. And, but what I did notice was how friendly these people were. They weren't like those New Yorkers or the northern people, you know. These were, well, honey, you know, what's your baby's name, you know. And then I was dressed at that day, and that day was a hot day. May 12th, something like that. And it was hot. And I was hot, and I was dressed in a tweed suit with a sweater underneath it. And I thought, I'm going to just collapse with all this heat. It's horrible. And then when I'd say, it's very warm, isn't it? And people would say, oh, honey, you just wait till July and August gets here. Then you can say it's warm. It'll be hot then. So I thought, well, I don't know if I'm happy that I'm over here or not, because I'm just going to melt. I'm already too hot. But anyway, and Donna was most unhappy. She cried and cried and cried. And one lady on the train, she said, honey, is your baby sick? I said, no. I said, but she just doesn't seem happy. And I said, you know, she's broken out in a kind of rash. And I said, but I'm afraid to expose her and let anyone look at her, because it may be measles she has. That's all I knew with you know, speckled skin. And the woman laughed. She said, oh, honey, that's not measles. She said she's got too many clothes on. And what my baby daughter was wearing were hand-knitted woolen undershirt, you know, dress, a jacket, a shawl. It was that my mother had knitted. Well, that poor little thing was just roasting, and she was breaking out in, what did they used to call it then? Oh, prickly heat. Broken out. Her skin was, and she was miserable. She said, you come with me. And we went to the restroom there on the train, and we took off her clothes, you know, and kind of dampened her down and cooled her off. And she was so much better then, but I didn't realize that's why she was so unhappy. And she was using a bottle to drink by, and at that time I wished I was nursing her. under those circumstances, because where I was seated on the train was one end of the train and the dining car was at the other end, so I'd have to walk all the way, up there to. And I didn't know enough to ask people to, help me. I didn't want to be intrusive, so anyway, but we finally got to Nashville, pulled in the station there, and the funny thing was, my husband had heard someone say, "No, that train from New York's not coming in on this platform. It's on another platform." So Bill said, "Oh, I'm not going to tell the family. I'm just going to go over there. They'll all be surprised. They'll be waiting on this platform, and Donna and her mom, Edna, will be coming in on that other one." So, but however, no, we came in on what was designated. So here came Bill, about 30 minutes, 20 minutes after I got there, just rushing in. But anyway, I was just welcomed, so much. Miss Mac, give me that. Bill's mom, give me that baby. And so, and sister-in-laws and the rest of the kin, were all there to greet me. So that was exciting, getting there. But I was totally exhausted. And of course, Bill, bless his heart, he was one to take me around, show me off, Here's the girl I've been waiting for. Here's my daughter I've been waiting for. And I thought, if I don't go to bed soon, I'm just going to collapse. Aww. Because, we hadn't slept good on board ship, and then certainly not on a train. Mm-hmm. But anyway, we made it. Everything turned out fine. And Bill had learned that the company he worked for out of Nashville had bought the Palace Theater, and he was designated to run that theater there. And he did, and here we've been ever since.
Awesome.
So,
now, how long were you all apart when you were waiting to come over?
6. I guess it was almost a year.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And that was not uncommon, right? That was kind of a normal thing for the military wives.
Well, yes. I mean, you're certainly at their disposal, and, no matter how many times you went to the American Embassy there in London, sorry.
Mom, would you tell Amy about you telling us how when you moved to Greenville, how Daddy had found his church here, started going to the Methodists, and how I was telling her how people treated you here. How
I'd be delighted to. Bill was raised a Baptist. Mm-hmm. All his family attended the Baptist church, and mine was Episcopal. And there wasn't an Episcopal church here in Greenville. Closest one, I believe, at that time was in Madisonville. But Bill had, in the theater there, this man would stop by and talk to Bill, and introduced himself as the pastor or minister down at the Methodist church. And they became quite, well acquainted. And he said, when your wife comes over, please come and visit and bring her to the church. And Bill, meanwhile, had visited somewhat, down here at the Greenville Methodist. And so when I arrived, Bill had developed a very strong relationship with the fellow, and I can't even think of his name now, but he ran the newspaper here in Greenville. And they discuss and talk about things, and Bill said, now, I want you to go in, because this man knows that you're coming over really soon. But he said, you're here, and I want you to go in and kind of play a little trick on him. So I said, okay. So I go into the leader news office there, and this gentleman said, can I help you? I said, yes, I would like to have a yearly subscription to the newspaper. Oh, he said, I'd be happy to. And he said, your name? I said, Mrs. Bill McSpedden. Lord have mercy. Oh, you're here. And, oh, just the biggest hug. He said, oh, honey, we've waited and waited for you and everyone that knows Bill. And, when is she going to get here? When is she going to get here? And then we had started looking for places to live, which was very difficult because that was right after the war, and they literally had not been building new homes, and apartments were not, available. Not many were available. But we finally started going to the Methodist Church regularly. And I was absolutely overwhelmed by the love and the interest and the warmth that people greeted me. And of course I admit, I was the first foreigner, to live here in Greenville, and so people were curious, but nevertheless they were just so dear and so sweet, and I just fell in love with the people there in the Methodist Church. The pastor was so nice, and it was just really nice. So I said, this is for me, and we joined the church, and all my 3 girls were raised in it, and they just love it, and I do too. And now people were so sweet and kind to me, not that there'd be any reason not to be, kind of thing, but I wasn't like a refugee or anything like that. There was someone said once to me, I bet you're glad to be in the United States of America, but better off where you were. And I said, no. I said, I certainly had never planned to come over here. I said, no, as a child, I always thought I'd like to go to either to Canada or New Zealand. But the United States was the last place I really wanted to come to, wasn't interested. But anyway, here's where I wound up, and certainly have no regrets. And I know my 3 girls, they've flourished here. And they have a lot of friends who love them, and then 2 years after I got here, my mother and father came. Mother, I'm sure, nagged Dad until he couldn't say no, because Dad was very much an Englishman, and he would like to have stayed over there. But Mother wanted to get over here and get with her baby and her daughter, So they came and settled in Nashville and lived there a few years until Dad died. And then Mother decided to live here in Greenville, and did, and had a very happy relationship here in Greenville for several years. So that worked out fine too.
Good.
But there's so many little things, One rather amusing. The pastor of the Greenville Methodist Church then, he and his wife, they'd often just take me out sightseeing around, And one time we were driving. It was a summer's night, warm night, and we were driving out in the country. And I said, "Stop! Stop!" And he said, "What?" I said, "What are all those lights?" I can see lights. I said, yeah, they're moving. And he said, they're lightning bugs. I said, what? He said, lightning bugs. And here were these thousands of them. Of course, there were so many more then than there are now.
I bet.
But I thought that was just phenomenal to see bugs flying around that lit up at night.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we had glowworms in England, but they crawled, you know, and they would kind of have a light to them. But we didn't have lightning bugs. In fact, we didn't have too many bugs at all over there. I soon found that screens on the windows were a necessity.
Mm-hmm.
I'd never heard of screens on windows. We just didn't have that many bugs. Very few flies. So, but it was different here. And the food was different. Yeah. I learned to like things that I'd never had heard of. Watermelon, cantaloupe, biscuits. That's what, in England, biscuits are cookies.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, when Bill's mom said, would you like some biscuits with your breakfast? I thought, cookies with a breakfast? I don't think so. I said, no. So she brought out, you know, what they call biscuit. But little things like that, you know, are kind of fun.
Now, what about the fire department that I saw the ceremony with the plaque?
Oh,
Can you tell me a
yes.
little about that?
Well, Bill was always interested, and for many years, he was part of the volunteer fire department,
Mm-hmm.
and was very busy, and enjoyed the years that he worked, you know, with the fire department, and unfortunately, the last fire chief lost his life when he was fighting a fire at the end of the street here. Charlie Doss lost his life, and they approached Bill to see, you know, would you be interested in taking the job? And Bill said, all right. And he did, so he became the fire chief then, and just enjoyed it always. Well liked by the men, and Bill was never afraid to, as he said, I never asked my men to do something that I wouldn't do myself.
Mm-hmm.
So if anything, Bill was the first one to go in and out of fire because, you know, I don't know, but he just did. But he did a good job, and then we had they dedicated a new tanker truck that they got, and named it, you know, Chief McSpedden tanker. So we have that.
Which your grandson David now has.
That's what I was going to ask. How does that make you proud that David is
sure. I love
right in
it
there?
that David, yes, that and he'll do a fine job, and he's most interested in it, and you know, and I think he not only appreciated the fact, but he was proud of being a fireman, and you know, it made him feel good,
Mm-hmm.
rather than just working in just an ordinary job. He just liked that, and he was just really. He was always courteous and kind, and there was a few acts of heroism that he displayed when things were, you know, something bad had happened. Devastated when something called fire and a life was lost. He hated that. I think a child was killed in a mobile home, you know, and that was rough. Or if someone caught up in a pond or a little lake, you know, get the fire department. So there was always many things for firemen to do, not necessarily with a fire, but anything where it calls for a group of men to get together, you know. Yeah, there was a fellow digging years ago when they were building a house way over there across the street, Patrick home. They were some plumbers. I think they were laying a pipe, you know. Anyway, the trench caved in, you know. Fire department, out they came and pulled him out of that. And and then they're, of course, visiting the schools, you know, telling the children. And then one of the nicest things that happened to Bill was that Mr. Payne down at the nursing home, Maple Manor, years ago, asked him if he would play Santa Claus for Christmas. Bill said, well, okay. And the man said, I'll get you a suit, and I'll get you a nice suit. And, okay. So Bill was Santa Claus. And from that very first time, it never stopped. Every Christmas, he spent more time in that red suit at various people's homes, churches, schools, you name it. Get Bill McSpedden, he's good. Get Bill McSpedden. And sure enough, everybody liked Bill being the Santa Claus.
And how long was he with the fire department?
Oh, my goodness. Number of years, because for many years he was, you know, just on a volunteer.
Mm-hmm.
And,
I'm not exactly sure either. We need to find out.
uh-huh.
Jerry Aders.
I was going to say, I can ask Jerry.
Yes.
Get, for sure.
I don't believe, I don't think I know just how many years. It's been rather coincidental, but as Helen told you, Greg Diedrich's, you know, with the fire department here and also in Madisonville. And then for several years we had Tommy Rose. He was a fireman. So I was surrounded by firemen.
Felt very safe, huh?
It was kind
I
of
think
nice.
that was a God thing.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, all I know is that he did a good job. He was proud of his job. He was proud of Greenville. As I told the members of my church the Sunday after Bill was buried, I said, Bill McSpedden was born and raised a Tennessean, but he died a Greenville Kentuckian. He liked Greenville. It was just nice people.
Definitely.
Nice people.
So the Palace Theater, was that Greenville Palace Theater where he was sent to?
Mm-hmm.
What did he do for the Palace?
He
What
ran
was
the
his-
films. He bought them.
manager?
Yes, he was a manager.
Wow.
Yeah. So, of course, all the kids, teenagers, when they were old enough to start working, taking up tickets or, you know, getting in the projection booth, you know,
Mm-hmm.
Bill, can I get a job when I get some? Sure. Just come on up. And so, you know, but it was nice.
I mean, this is for at least 20 years.
Oh, and I don't know if y'all have heard, but the Greenville Tourism Commission is, I don't know if they've confirmed it, but they're thinking about restoring the marquee.
See, I've got chills. I mean,
Yeah.
oh.
That's,
Oh my goodness, no, I didn't.
My eyes have seen the glory